This is page 212 in your notes. In this lesson we'll be looking at creating charts in Microsoft Office, specifically in Excel. Excel provides many different ways to chart data. We'll jump right into Excel and take a look at that. So this is a file that's on Blackboard called Excel Charting. We'll be working on the first worksheet, which is called PH. On the Insert tab in the Charts group, we'll just hover over a few of these. There are column charts and bar charts, line charts and area charts, pie charts or donut charts, combo charts, pivot charts, many kinds. Probably the most important type of chart for technologists and engineers is the Scatterplot. And we'll look at a few examples of this type of chart and a couple others in this short lesson. We'll start right here. We'll create a chart relating pH and hydrogen ion concentration. So in cell E2, if you would type in hydrogen ion concentration, that is a molar hydrogen ion concentration of 1E minus 7. No special formatting, Excel picks it up. Let's select that cell. We'll go down to cell A8, and if you go to the Home tab, we'll go to Fill and Series. We're going to choose to fill this with values from 1E minus 7 down to 1E minus 1. The series will be in columns, since we selected the column, Excel knows this. We're going to choose a growth rather than addition increment. We'll use a step value of 10. We don't need a stop value because we pre-selected the cells, and say OK. And there's our values from 10 to the minus 7 to 10 to the minus 1 moles per liter hydrogen ion. Let's calculate the pH for this. That'll be equals the negative log. And notice log is identified. The first argument is the number, and the optional argument is for a base. If you do not include a base, it assumes it's base 10, and we're using base 10, so we can just complete that now. And that should be a pH of 7. If you double click on the autofill button, it should automatically fill down to the end of that series where there's values in an adjacent cell. All right, let's chart this using a scatter plot. So select the X and Y values, and by default, X values are in the first column and Y values are in the column to the right. Go to Insert. We'll choose a scatter plot. We'll choose with smooth lines and markers. So to begin with, if you click on the chart, even though it's already selected, by doing so, we'll open up the Chart Design tab, and you can choose the Quick Layout. And I'm going to choose Quick Layout number 1 because it gives me placeholders for my chart title and chart labels. So our x-axis, if you click once on the placeholder and then a second time so the cursor is flashing, Control A selects it all, and we'll type in hydrogen ion concentration. We'll format it later. And for the y-axis, click once, click a second time to see the flashing cursor, Control A to select all, and then pH. Same thing on the chart title. We'll call this pH versus hydrogen ion concentration. It's always Y versus X. It's the way charts are named. So it's pH versus hydrogen ion concentration because pH is on the y-axis. We don't need a legend, so we can select and delete that. We'd like to adjust our x-axis values so they're consistent with what we're plotting. So if you simply right-click on the x-axis and choose to format the axis, choose a minimum of our lowest value, that would be 1E minus 7. And we'll choose a maximum value of 1E minus 1. We can add some vertical grid lines if you right-click on the x-axis and choose Add Major Grid Lines. We can also add labels to our points. right-click on one of the points and add data labels. By default, Excel only adds the labels for the Y values. We want to add X value labels as well. So just click on the chart. You should see this Add Chart Elements plus sign appear. Click on it and scroll down to Data Labels. Notice it's already selected. And click on the arrow to the right and scroll down to More Options. And then notice only the Y values are selected, so also select the X values and close that. Now we can move the labels by, once they're highlighted, simply drag them to the position you want them to be in. How do we superscript and subscript fonts in Excel? Well, select the font you want to alter and go to the Home tab and the Font group. This is the Font Settings dialog box. Choose Superscript and say OK. Kind of tedious. There's no easy way to do that. Here I'll show you a little bit of a shortcut. Select the plus sign. Control-Shift-1 opens up the font dialog box, and then Alt-P will select superscript, and then Enter will press the OK. So that's Alt-P, Enter, and that works as well. All right, let's resize this. Drag on one of the corner handles for proportional resizing. Let's drag a copy of that. With the chart selected, hold the Control key down and drag a copy. On this copy, I'd like you to change the x-axis to be logarithmic. That will linearize the plot. So right-click on the axis and choose to format the axis. And notice here we have an option to choose a logarithmic scale. So now we have a straight line, but our y-axis origin is at the right-hand side and it should be at the left. So again, right-click on the x-axis, choose to format the axis, and notice the vertical axis crosses at. Unselect automatic, but instead choose an axis value, and we'll choose 1e minus 7 and say OK. So there's our first scatter plot in Excel. You want to move now to the next worksheet called 2 Data Series. On the 2 Data Series worksheet, in this exercise we're going to look at creating a chart that has 2 data series on the same plot. So I have some x values in column A, 0, 3, 6, 9, 12, and 15. And in column B, in cell B2, I've got the formula equals 3x minus 10, x being cell A2. I can copy that formula down, autofill, just double-click the autofill button. These are all the values of y1 that correspond to these x values. In cell C2, I have the formula equals -2 times x, here in cell A2, plus 10. Let's autofill that down. We want to plot these 2 data series on the same graph. They share the same x values, so simply select all of the x and y values together, choose Insert, Scatterplot. We'll choose Joined with Straight Lines. Alright, so we'd like to have our x-axis intersect the y-axis at the bottom of our graph. So we'll right-click on the y-axis and choose to format that axis. And we have here horizontal axis crosses at. Let's change the axis value to -30. Looks better. We'd like to label our x and y axes. With the chart selected, on the Chart Design tab, choose Quick Layout number 1, and that creates placeholders. Click on the placeholder till you see a flashing cursor, Control A, then just type in, I'll label this X. Likewise for the Y-axis, I'll label that Y. For the chart title, let's label that 2 data series. Plotting 2 data series. Alright, so we'd like to put our legend at the top. With the chart selected, there's the Chart Elements tool highlighted. Select it. Notice that legend is selected, but on the right side, click on the right arrow. Let's put them at the top. Let's add some vertical grid lines. Right-click on the X-axis and add major grid lines. If we'd like to add data labels, to recall how to do that, simply right-click on one of the points, go down to Data Labels. There are a couple options here. The callouts are kind of messy, they cover the graph, but choose Add Data Labels. And again, we would like to have both X and Y values, so if you right-click here and choose Format the Data Labels, you can select X values as well, and close that. Same for the other data set. Right-click on a point, Data Labels, Add Data Labels, right-click on a point, format the data labels, add the X values as well. Looks pretty good. We need a legend that indicates exactly what we're looking at. Series 1 and Series 2 give no information whatsoever to the reader of what this is, so we'd like to label these accordingly. Series 1 is the equation y1 equals 3x minus 10, and that should be here. And Series 2 is the equation y2 equals negative 2x plus 10. To change this, with the chart selected, click on the Chart Design tab and choose Select Data. It's a really useful tool. There's Series 1 selected, and choose Edit. And here the series name will be equal to y1 equals 3x minus 10. Say OK, and for Series 2, select it and edit, and the name is y2 equals negative 2x plus 10, and say OK, and OK. Now we've labeled our legend properly. If you want to add a point to the graph, let's say for example we extend our X values down to 18, and we need a corresponding Y value. How do we add this point 1844 to the first graph? Well, one of the ways you can do this is select the point XY, Control C to copy to the clipboard, select the graph where it's going to be pasted, then choose on the Home tab, choose Paste Special. In the Paste Special dialog box, is this a new series or a new point? It's a new point. We're adding it to an existing series. The values are in columns. That's correct. We check off categories X values in the first column. That's where the X value is, and say OK. And there it is added. So plotting 2 data series on the same graph when they share the same X values, simply select all the data at once, all the X and all the Y values. What happens if you want to plot 2 data series that have different X, Y coordinates? That's the next exercise. It's in the worksheet entitled 2 Series Different Values. So here I have the same 2 equations again. In cell B2 I've got the equation equals 3x minus 10, and I copied that down to give the same data points we saw previously. And down in cell B9 I've got the equation equals minus 2x plus 10 as before. How do we plot these 2 separate data sets on the same graph? Well, first we plot one and then we add the second. Let's select one set of XY values, insert Scatterplot, markers and straight lines. I'm going to make sure the graph is selected and choose quick layout number 1. We can pretty it up later. To add the second data set, simply select the data set, Control C to copy it to the clipboard, then select the chart. That'll tell Excel where these data are to be pasted. Then choose Paste Special. In the Paste Special dialog box, this is not new points, this is a new series. Y values are in columns, and choose categories, x-axis values in the first column. Correct. Just say OK, and there's our second series on the same chart when they have different sets of XY data. I'll let you finish up the chart. Our next exercise is plotting two lines on the same chart but having two different y-axes. And this is on the Excel worksheet called secondary axis. So here I have pressure in atmospheres, temperature in Kelvin, and temperature in degrees Celsius. Recall Guy-Lussac's law that pressure and temperature are directly related at constant volume. So by doubling the pressure, I would double the Kelvin temperature, or vice versa, by doubling the Kelvin temperature, I'll double the pressure. So let's get a series of pressures that double. Let's select cells A2 to A6. On the Home tab, under Fill, choose Series. We want a growth, and we use a step value of 2, which means it's doubles, and say OK. So we'll have pressures of 0.1, 0.2, 0.4, 0.8, and 1.6. Starting at 298 Kelvin, which is 25 degrees C, let's get our Kelvin temperatures to double accordingly. Select cells B2 to B6. On the Home tab, Fill, Series, and again we'll use a growth with a step rate of 2. And OK. And for the Celsius temperature, it's simply Kelvin minus 273. All right, let's plot these on the same graph. We'll start by plotting the first data set, pressure and Kelvin temperature together. We would choose those values, go to Insert, a scatter plot, markers and straight lines. I'll choose quick layout number 1 with placeholders. The x-axis title is pressure in atmospheres. The y-axis title, this will be temperature in Kelvin. For the chart title, we'll simply label it temperature versus pressure. Let's move the legend to the top. Choose the chart elements, legend to the right at the top. Now we'd like to add the second data set as well. So to select two sets of data that are not adjoining, select the first set, the pressure values, hold down the Control key, then select the Celsius temperature values. Control C copies it to the clipboard, select the graph, and go Paste Special. In the Paste Special dialog box, this is a new series. The Y values are in columns, and check off X values in the first column. And there's our second data set, Series 2. Let's correctly label our legend with the chart selected. Choose Chart Design, select Data, Series 1. Edit. This will be temperature in Kelvin versus pressure in atmospheres. The Series 2 label should be temperature in Celsius versus P in atmospheres. And OK. And OK. So how will we create a secondary y-axis? Simply right-click on one of the points in the series that will be identified by the secondary y-axis. In this case, it'll be the black line, and choose to format the data series. Notice it says plot series on. Primary axis is selected. That's how it's currently plotted, but choose secondary axis. There it is. Now we'd like to use the same values on both y axes so we can see the relative positions. We know that the Kelvin temperature should be higher than the Celsius temperature. That is, the orange line should be above the black line, and they should be parallel to each other because they only differ by a constant value of 273. So we'll simply change the secondary y-axis to have the same values as the primary y-axis. So we'll right click and format the axis, and we'll choose a maximum value of, say, 6,000, same as the other axes, and say OK. We need to add an axis title to our new secondary vertical axes. Select the graph, add chart elements, axis titles, scroll to the right. Notice here secondary vertical. We could also add one to the upper horizontal if we had such. We'll label this one T in degrees Celsius. So there it is, creating a chart with two data sets using two different y-axes. Page 220, Excel surface plots. It's relatively easy in Excel to create three-dimensional surface plots of three variable linear and nonlinear relationships, and this certainly helps with visualization of relationships. Let's take a look at a couple examples. This is a pressure, volume, temperature surface plot for an ideal gas. Notice that as the temperature increases, so does its volume of a gas. Likewise, as the temperature increases, so does the pressure. And so we have two linear direct relationships, and this therefore plots as a flat surface in three-dimensional space. Here's the same data plotted, but this time relative to volume. So temperature and volume are directly related. As the temperature increases, the volume increases. But as the pressure increases, the volume decreases. So we have an inverse relationship as well as direct linear. The result is a curved surface, easily created in Excel. Here's a polynomial three-variable equation. Z is equal to 5x squared minus 4y to the fourth power. Creates a beautiful surface plot in Excel. This is a multiple linear regression where y is a function of two x values, x1 squared and x2, another surface plot. All of these can be created in Excel. I'm going to take you through the process of creating this PVT surface plot for an ideal gas, and then you can apply it to other equations as you choose. Let's get started. So in the worksheet entitled PVT Student or ST, I have a data set here. Now I'm using the ideal gas equation, PV equals nRT. Rearranging to solve for temperature, I have PV over nR. I chose to use the number of moles of gas as 1, and the R value I'm using is 0.8206 liters atmospheres per mole per Kelvin. So in this grid I have chosen 10 different volumes incrementing 5 liters at a time from 5 to 50 liters. I'm choosing 6 different pressures incrementing 0.4 atmospheres at a time. At the intersection of each P and V value, I calculate the temperature using the ideal gas equation using P times V over N times R. And these values in green in the body of the table are the temperature in Kelvin. So plotting a 3D plot is somewhat different than a 2D plot. In 2D plots we select the X and Y values together, but for a 3D plot we can't do that, so we select only the values that are in the main grid, the main matrix, and we'll choose those alone and insert a chart. Now in the bottom right corner of the Charts tool group, click the icon that says See All Charts, and again on the tab that says All Charts, scroll down until you see surface plot. We have a 3D surface or a wire surface, and we'll try the 3D surface, but either one works, and say OK. There's our basic 3D plot. With the chart selected, on the Chart Design tab, I'll choose Quick Layout 1 because I'd like to have placeholders for axis titles and the chart title. Now in a 3D plot, the vertical axis is always the data that's in the main body of the table. So this data right here on the vertical axis is the temperature in Kelvin.
Now Excel automatically assigns the horizontal axis to whichever data set has the greater number of values.
So there are 10 volume values and only 6 pressures. So these 10 values correspond to the volume values. And this axis over here is not currently labeled. We have to create a placeholder for that. Select the chart, choose the Add Chart Elements tool, scroll down to Axis Titles, scroll across, and select Depth. That's the depth axis, and we'll call that Pressure in Atmospheres. For our chart title, I'll call it a PVT surface plot. I'd like to move this legend. Select the chart, add chart elements, legend, and we'll put it at the bottom just to get it out of the way. Now notice that the axis values for the horizontal axis and the depth axis are not the values displayed. These numbers 1 through 10 are not the volumes, but they should be. And these series 1 through 5 are not the pressures, and they should be. So we need to properly label our axes. So select the chart, go to the Design tab, Chart Design, and choose Select Data. Now in the horizontal category Axis Labels, choose Edit, and it says Axis Label Range. Now these are the volumes, so simply drag over the volume values and say OK, and OK. Those are the volumes, 5 through 50, easily added. The depth axis is not so easy. It's a little more tedious, but is done in a similar fashion. Select Data. We have to do these individually. So Series 1 will be our first pressure point right here, point 4. So Series 1 is selected, Edit, and in Series Name, select the cell where our actual value is, and say OK. See how it's been labeled here, 0.4 atmospheres. Choose Series 2, Edit, and this will be 0.8. OK. Series 3, Edit, that's 1.2. OK. Series 4, Edit, 1.6. OK. Series 5, Edit, 2.0. OK. And finally we have Series 6, Edit, is 2.4. OK, and OK. So those are now the proper axis values. To get more detail on this depth axis, let's select it, right click on it, format the axis. Here under Specify Interval Unit, on the Labels group, we can type in 0.4, enter. Keeps it at 1, but that gives us the detail we need, so that should work okay. It's looking pretty good. We'd like to make it look 3D now. This is just a matter of formatting and style. Let's apply some grid lines, right click, add major grid lines. Likewise, on the depth axis, let's right click and add major grid lines. Starting to take shape. Select the graph, and then an important tool for plotting graphs is found on the Format tab. Here under Chart Area, this lists all the pieces of the graph or the chart. And so it's an easy way to adjust what you want to adjust. For example, if I want to change the formatting on the back wall, choose back wall, You see now it's selected, and I can go ahead and use a fill color, whatever seems appropriate. Likewise for this side wall, select the chart, chart area, come down to side wall, shape fill, let's choose something light, and so on. Now the chart area, or the plot area, to adjust the color of that's a little bit different. You have to actually select the colors for each section of this here in the legend. So for example, if I click in the legend, then click again on the color, make sure that one is selected, double click, and it opens up a formatting pane for that. Let's create something a little bit darker, and I can adjust the transparency as desired until you can see through as much as you think you need to. Here is this middle color here, solid fill. I'll choose the same color again and adjust your transparency as you see fit. And likewise this lowest section, solid fill. So you can play with this to adjust transparency and color to get it as you wish to look. And that's basically it for creating a 3D plot. It's really just a case of adjusting the formatting till it appears the way you want it to look. Page 225. The last type of chart in Excel that I'd like to show you are called stock plots. You see one here. So we have analysis of ethanol by volume by three different methods: by conventional distillation, by rapid distillation, which is steam distillation, and by near-infrared analysis. So we see that there were 3 trials by each method and an average value. To present this graphically would really help us to visualize the data's variance and its mean, particularly when we're doing ANOVA analysis and such. So how do we create this stock plot? Let's go into Excel and I'll show you how it's done. So here in the worksheet called stock plot, students, here are our 3 trials for each of the 3 methods. To create the plot, select cells A3 to D5. That is the 3 trials of data plus the 3 trial names, trial 1, trial 2, trial 3. Insert. In the charts group, choose See All Charts, and then again the All Charts tab and go to Stock. We want to use the high, low, close, this very first one, and say OK. Well, it doesn't look like much, but we do see we have 3 lines representing our 3 sets of data. Let's get some axis titles if we can with the chart selected. I'll choose quick layout number 1, and notice it does not give axis labels, only a chart title. To get the axis labels, let me just shrink this a little bit. We're going to have to use the Add Chart Elements tab, and there's our axis titles. I'll let you type those in at your leisure. As you see here, percent by volume ethanol on the y-axis and method of analysis as the x-axis title. Also, we probably should change our y-axis value. We have a lot of dead space here. Let's use a minimum y value of 34.80. So right click on the y-axis, choose to format the axis. I'll take 34.8 as a minimum. That stretches it out a bit. So we want to include our averages. That wasn't included in the first group. Select the chart. Notice that our 3 data sets are included. Simply drag this down to include the average values, and nothing seems to have happened, but we didn't get a 4th group, and that's good. See these small tiny wee dots here? Those are the average values that have been added. So if you go to the Format tab with the chart selected, on the far left, chart area, click and you'll see here series average. Select that, and it highlights the average values that have been added: 35.1, 35.00, and 34.90. How about trial 3 values? There they are. Trial 2, they're shown, and trial 1. So it's all there, it's just a matter of making it look legible now. I'd like to include this data table, so select the chart, add chart elements, and click Data Table. There's the data: trial 1, trial 2, trial 3, and average. Now 1, 2, and 3 aren't very descriptive of what the different tests are. We'd like to have this labeled correctly. So with the chart selected, go to the Chart Design tab, choose Select Data. Now we don't want to change the names here of these values. Trial 1, trial 2, trial 3, average is good. We want to change the names of 1, 2, and 3, which are over here. So they're all selected, 1, 2, and 3. Just choose Edit and scroll over the 3 names that you want to include. That would be cells B2 to D4, and you see they're added very nicely for us. And say OK. Next, we should add some data labels so we can actually read the results. Select the chart, add chart elements, select data labels. So they're all laying over top of each other. How are we going to separate them? And with the chart selected, go to the Format tab, go to the Chart Elements, go down and select the Series Average Data Labels. So they're selected. Now let's see if we can maybe scroll in and pull just those out. If I can grab that and we'll pull it to the left. There it is, 35.10. And over here 35.00. Let's select the averages again. Data labels, there it is, 35.00. See if I can pull that over. Good. And for the third one, the average is 34.90. 34.90 is that value there. We can pull that to the left. So now we see our averages. If we want to spread out our individual values, we can simply drag them out and we'll get little callouts for each one. Makes it a lot easier to visualize. There we go. I do the same with all of these, and so on. I'd like to add markers to our data points to make them easier to see. So open the formatting panes and do that by double-clicking on the chart. And we want to select those individually, so come over here to Format, again the Chart Elements, and choose the Series Average. We'll start with the averages, and then you see they're highlighted here. Those are the points, but we can't really see them. Choose in the Format Series Data Marker, Marker Options. The default is none. Go to Built-in. See, now they're highlighted. We can change the color to whatever we wish. I'm going to make those red. And there's our first set of markers created. You can do the same with the other markers. Notice that the marker is also added here to our table of values. So there's a very neat way of showing comparison of data sets using what's called a stock plot in Excel. The full details are in the notes, but I think you can see from this how to do it. So that'll be the end of our lesson on creating charts in Excel. In some of our later lessons in the course, we'll see a few more charts created as we encounter them, but this is a good start. Thanks for watching.